Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
We are diving into, really, the foundational source material for a text that kind of redefined Western spiritual thought. Paramahansa Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi.
Huge one.
Huge. And we're focused, really laser-focused, on just the first chapter, My Parents in Early Life. And this isn't just, a simple introduction. It feels more like a spiritual manifesto, right?
Right.
He's setting out the rules of the universe as he sees it, right from the jump.
That's exactly right. And for you, the listener, this deep dive it's really a shortcut to understanding the spiritual bedrock of modern Indian culture. Yogananda says right away that India's true identity, he famously calls it her sole remaining wealth, is rooted in this tradition of great masters who emerge in every generation.
So it's not about economics or military power.
Not at all. It's about spiritual genius. That's the real currency.
And the whole story, this entire narrative, it's built on two ideas that are they're non-negotiable. First, this constant, unwavering search for ultimate truth. And second, the absolute necessity of the guru-disciple relationship to even have a chance in that search.
Exactly.
So we're going to track how that necessity played out. And we're starting with Yogananda's own pretty astonishing claims about his consciousness from the moment he was born.
Our mission here is to really grasp this setting, the vital importance of the guru, and then to explore the, truly surprising aha moments that happened in his infancy, his childhood, and even within his family. We're looking for the evidence that, prepared him for this monumental role he was going to play.
All right, so let's start with a concept that immediately sets this book apart from, almost every other biography out there.
Yeah.
The author claims his consciousness retained memories from before he was even born.
It's a huge claim to open with.
Right. He says his earliest recollections cover the anachronistic features of a previous incarnation. And he's specific. He says he had clear, persistent memories of being a yogi amidst the Himalayan snows.
And this claim is really the philosophical cornerstone of the entire book. We have to understand the premise behind it. The source material is basically arguing against the common Western idea that consciousness is just something the brain does.
That it's just a byproduct of biology.
Exactly. The text asserts that man is fundamentally of incorporeal nature, so your true self isn't your body.
Okay, so if the self isn't the body, what happens when the body dies?
Well, according to this view, the essential core of who you are, your identity, it remains. The physical body is just the vehicle, temporarily allied with sense perception. So Yogananda's memory, in this context, means that his self-consciousness was retained without any interruption.
So the dramatic transition to and from life and death, it didn't cause, a memory wipe.
Precisely. He just changed roles, changed bodies, but didn't suffer memory loss. And that's profound because it just collapses the boundary we imagine between different lives.
And wow, if you retained the full, sophisticated awareness of an adult yogi, and then you're suddenly born into a helpless infant body, that must be a kind of existential trauma.
It's a central point he makes. He calls it the helpless humiliations of infancy.
Think about it. The cognitive dissonance there must be immense.
Absolutely. He had the full adult understanding, complex thoughts, emotional depth, the memory of being able to walk, but he was confronted by this total bodily impotence. He describes feeling, and this is his word, resentfully conscious of not being able to walk or express himself freely.
That puts a whole new spin on a fussy baby. He
Yeah.
wasn't just crying because he was hungry or something.
Not at all. He describes having obstinate crying spells because he was trapped. He was frustrated by the, quote, beguiling scope of an infant's world being limited to just toys and toes. For him, these physical limitations were a humiliation, a temporary, deeply annoying setback.
And that torment, it actually drove him inward to a spiritual practice, even as a baby.
Yes, the source notes that this led to prayerful surges as he came to grips with his limitations. He wasn't just, lashing out in distress. He was actively channeling the spiritual discipline he remembered to try and overcome this new physical prison.
The level of sophistication is it's wild, and it's supported by the linguistic detail he gives. He says his strong emotional life took form silently as words in many languages, even though his ear had to slowly get used to the Bengali syllables his family was speaking.
And that detail is so important. It reinforces the claim of a continuous soul, a traveling consciousness that had accessed other cultures and languages in previous lives.
So the struggle for him wasn't just learning to be a baby, it was reconciling his vast internal self with this tiny new external vehicle.
Yes. The gradual triumph of, say, lisping his first word or taking his first step wasn't just normal childhood development for him. It was a hard-won battle of his will against this new body's limitations, a slow, painful reintegration.
And he's careful, too, not to present himself as some total anomaly. He explicitly says his far-reaching memories are not unique.
Right, he mentions other yogis who retain their self-consciousness, but also, and I think this is crucial, he mentions voracious men and women he met in his travels who recounted similar, verifiable early memories.
That part is key, isn't it? It takes it out of the realm of, like, I'm a special spiritual genius, and puts it into the realm of a potential spiritual science.
Exactly. The implied message is that if your spiritual focus is high enough, or maybe if the trauma of your last death was quick enough, these memories can and do persist. It provides a whole philosophical foundation for why Indian culture is so focused on spiritual development, to minimize that shock of transition and maximize the continuity of your consciousness.
Okay, so let's shift from the internal architecture of Yogananda's mind to the external structure of his life, his family.
The world he was born into.
Right. Born in the late 19th century in Gorakhpur, he was the fourth of 8 children. His parents were Bengalis of the Kriya caste, and he describes both of them as having saintly natures.
And we should probably pause on the Kshatriya caste for a second. It's significant. They were traditionally the administrative or warrior class, not the priestly Brahmins.
So a class of action and duty.
Precisely. And that context really explains why the father was such a highly successful, logical, vice president level officer in the British-run Bengal-Nagpur Railway. Their spirituality wasn't cloistered or purely philosophical. It was disciplined, practical, and applied directly to managing the affairs of the world. It fit that duty-bound nature of the Kshatriya role.
And the parents themselves, they were a study in this perfect complementary contrast. He says they achieved a perfect parental harmony that was the calm center for the, and I love this phrase, revolving tumult of 8 young lives.
It's a beautiful image, and the contrast is so clear. The father, Bhagavati Charan Ghosh, was defined by intellect and rigor. He was kind, grave, stern when he had to be, and an outstanding mathematician and logician.
The kids kept a certain reverential distance.
Yeah, they loved him, but they respected his stern intellectual approach. He was, as the book says, guided principally by his intellect.
And the mother, on the other hand, was the emotional heart of the family, a queen of hearts who taught only through love. Her whole thing was an open hand toward the needy. She was pure compassion.
And it's noted that it was really through her presence that the father's more Spartan tenderness was kept in check. After she died, the text says the father displayed more of his inner tenderness. She brought that out of him.
Their love was described as tranquil and dignified, and their home life was just infused with this spiritual discipline. They used scripture, tales from the Mahabharata and Ramayana, as teaching tools.
Resourcefully, too. They'd relate the actions of these great heroes to their children's own little misdemeanors for instruction and chastisement. It was a very structured spiritual upbringing.
And even the small details, like the mother dressing carefully every afternoon just to welcome the father home from work. It's a daily ritual of mutual respect.
But even in this saintly geometry, the tension between the father's logic and the mother's boundless compassion, it did surface sometimes, and it created these wonderfully human moments.
Yes, the Hackney carriage incident.
The best one. It was sparked by her just staggering level of charity.
Okay, let's get into this, because the scale of her generosity is incredible. At one point, she spent more money feeding the poor in a single fortnight than her husband, a high-level executive, earned in a whole month.
I mean, can you imagine?
No. And for anyone listening, a Hackney carriage was just a hired coach, a cab. So this is the equivalent of her storing out and calling an Uber to leave him, but, way more dramatic for the time.
And the father's rebuke was so incredibly gentle, so logical. He just said, "All I ask, please, is to keep your charities within a reasonable limit."
But for her, for the mother, whose spiritual impulse was just pure, immediate giving, this was a grievous offense.
Oh, yeah. Her response was pure drama. She orders the carriage, announces she's leaving for her mother's home, which Yogananda calls the ancient ultimatum.
I love that phrase, the ancient ultimatum. It's so recognizable, right? This marital dynamic is universal, even when the fight is about being too saintly.
Right. The whole crisis was only diffused by the timely arrival of her brother, the maternal uncle, who offered some sage counsel, and the father making some conciliatory remarks, and this was apparently the only trouble Yogananda ever saw between them.
Which brings us to the second anecdote, the more intellectual sparring match over the 10 rupees.
Yes, this one really pits the father's prudence against the mother's instant empathy. A hapless woman needs money.
And the father's caution, it comes from a really deep, personal, painful memory. He hesitates because he remembers being a poor student after his parents died. He needed just 1 rupee a month from a wealthy judge.
And the judge denied him.
Denied him, saying even a rupee is important. And that refusal, that small act of stinginess, it just hardened the father's perspective on financial prudence forever.
But the mother, the Queen of Hearts, she uses this instant, brilliant logic to just completely vanquish his argument. She turns his own trauma right back on him.
What did she say again?
She asks him, "Do you want this woman also to remember painfully your refusal of 10 rupees, which she needs urgently?"
Oof, that's a killer line. She didn't argue about money, she argued about pain. She framed his refusal as creating a new painful memory, just like the one he carried his whole life.
The intellectual argument just dissolved. He was, the source tells us, vanquished, and he immediately hands over the note, "With my goodwill."
It's such a perfect teaching moment. You have to temper logic with empathy. You have to realize that prudence can sometimes become cruelty.
And the balance in that family wasn't about compromise. It was about integrating 2 absolute spiritual principles: discipline and unconditional love.
The father is really a study in paradox, isn't he? He reaches the absolute apex of the corporate world, a high-ranking officer in a huge railway, but his personal life was just utterly Spartan.
He's the perfect ideal of someone who achieves worldly success without being spiritually compromised by it at all.
Exactly. His strict discipline, which we saw with his kids, was even more rigorously applied to himself. He actively shunned every possible luxury, never went to the theater.
Found his recreation in spiritual practices and reading the Bhagavad Gita. He was the principle of non-attachment in action.
And the little details just emphasize it so perfectly. The book mentions he'd cling to 1 old pair of shoes until they were just useless.
And even later in life, when his sons were successful and owned cars, the father insisted on taking the public trolley to the office every single day.
This wasn't just like austerity for show. It was an ingrained habit. It was anti-materialist to its core.
He had truly achieved that spiritual goal of the Gita, to act effectively in the world without any attachment to the fruits of your action. The idea of accumulating money for power was genuinely alien to his nature.
You really see that integrity when he helped organize the Calcutta Urban Bank. He was essential to its success, but he flat out refused to hold any shares.
Said his service was purely a civic duty, something he did in his spare time. He would not mix his service with personal gain.
But the most revealing story, the one that perfectly illustrates this deep spiritual detachment, is the bonus incident after he retired. And this wasn't about small change, this was a fortune.
A significant fortune. It's an incredible story.
Okay, let's detail this because it's just astonishing. Years after the father had retired, an English accountant is going over the company's books and discovers that Bhagavati Charan Ghosh had never applied for overdue bonuses.
He'd been doing the work of 3 men for years, and the company owed him a massive amount of back pay rupees 125,000. The source translates that to about $41,250 at the time.
Which, with inflation and purchasing power, is basically a 6-figure fortune today, a retirement windfall.
A huge sum of money. And when the company presented him with the check, he accepted it, but thought so little of it, he never even mentioned it to his family.
That's the part that gets me. He just put it in the bank and didn't say a word.
It was only discovered much later by his youngest brother, Vishnu, who saw this massive deposit on a bank statement and, asked him about it.
And what was his response?
That is the practical definition of viraga, or non-attachment. The money was his, he earned it honestly, but it held no emotional weight. His whole life was guided by the teaching he offered as his reflection on it. Why be elated by material profit? The one who pursues a goal of even-mindedness is neither jubilant with gain nor depressed by loss.
It's a profound connection to the highest ideals of karma yoga, selfless action, but manifested perfectly in a corporate setting.
And this rigid adherence to principle and discipline from the father, it provided the essential structure that made the mother's expansive, pure compassion sustainable.
And the synergy between these two, it was all cemented by their shared guru.
So the parents' spiritual path, it really began early in their married life when both of them became disciples of Lahiri Mahasaya of Benares. And this wasn't, a casual religious affiliation. This was a formal initiation into a very specific scientific path.
And we should probably define the context here. Lahiri Mahasaya was the reviver of Kriya Yoga, often called the airplane route to God realization. So for you, the listener, Kriya Yoga isn't just sitting and meditating. It's a specific, highly systematic form of breath control, pranayama, that's designed to rapidly accelerate your spiritual evolution.
So getting initiated meant they weren't just pious, they were pursuing a highly technical and disciplined spiritual science.
And that discipline translated immediately into their domestic life. I mean, we get that stunning admission from the mother to her eldest daughter, Roma, that she and the father lived together as man and wife only once a year for the purpose of having children.
It's an incredible detail. They were essentially maintaining an almost monastic lifestyle while raising 8 kids and running a household in a high-powered career.
It puts the harmony of that family in a completely different light.
Yeah.
It was a household dedicated to the ultimate search. Okay, so let's look at the father's specific journey to the guru. Even though he was a disciple, Father, the logician, still had this professional skepticism.
Which is challenged by his employee, a man named Abhinash Babu.
Right, Abhinash was also a disciple, and he was always talking up the guru to the young Yogananda. So one day, Abhinash asked for a week's leave to go visit the master in Benares.
And the father, reverting to his role as a strict executive, just ridiculed the plan. He asked if Abhinash was becoming a religious fanatic and told him to concentrate on your office work.
Abhinash was crushed. He walks home completely dejected, just repeating the guru's name silently in his heart. Lahiri Mahasaya, I cannot live without seeing you.
And the father, maybe feeling like he'd been too harsh, dismisses his servants and joins Abhinash to, offer him some counsel on achieving worldly success.
So they're standing side by side near a quiet field. And this is where the father's entire logical worldview just shatters.
Completely. Suddenly, the form of my great guru suddenly appeared just a few yards away from them.
Wait, let's just pause on that. A highly rational, vice president level logician is standing in a field and witnesses a physical manifestation, a materialization of a man who's hundreds of miles away. And he's there purely to intercede for his employee's vacation request.
The power of it was absolute. It wasn't a dream or a fleeting vision, it was a physical auditory event. The guru, addressing the father by his first name, used the exact phrase that had caused all the distress. Bhagavati, you are too hard on your employee.
And then he was gone.
Vanished instantly. The text doesn't describe the father wrestling with skepticism. It describes him being completely overwhelmed by verifiable, non-material power.
His logic was just superseded by direct proof. He realized the spiritual realm was more immediate and powerful than the corporate world he'd spent his life mastering. He was left motionless with stupefaction.
And his conversion was total and instantaneous. He immediately grants Abhinash the leave, and then he grants himself leave, declaring, I must know this great Lahiri Mahasaya who is able to materialize himself at will in order to intercede for you.
The display of power forced the logician to acknowledge a superior logic.
And when the parents traveled to Benares, Lahiri Mahasaya just confirms the whole experience by repeating the exact same stunning phrase, you are too hard on your employee. He then initiated both of them into Kriya Yoga, and that permanently cemented the spiritual foundation of the family.
And crucially, Lahiri Mahasaya took a definite interest in the author's birth. Even though he passed away shortly after Yogananda was born, he gave a prophecy, a divine link,
saying, your life shall surely be linked with his own. This established that Yogananda's spiritual path was preordained, sealed by the master's blessing from the very beginning.
So the physical passing of the guru, it didn't diminish his presence in the household at all. His picture was always on the family altar, acting as this constant, visible conduit for his spiritual power.
Right. Yogananda even recounts that as he grew up, he would often see the photographic image emerge from its small frame and taking a living form sit before me.
Which is a direct testament to the master's promise of omnipresence.
It is. Lahiri Mahasaya had written to his disciples, urging them, why come to view my bones and flesh when I am ever within range of your katasta spiritual sight?
Okay, let's clarify that for the listener. What exactly is katasta spiritual sight?
Katasta refers to the inner eye, the spiritual point between the eyebrows, what people often call the third eye center. So Lahiri Masai was telling his followers that he was constantly available right there within their own consciousness, visible to their inner eye of meditation, not just their physical eyes.
So the photograph was a physical focus point, a bridge to that inner reality, which explains the dramatic healing incident.
The ultimate test. It came when Yogananda was 8 years old at the family estate in Ichapur. He was struck down by Asiatic cholera.
Which was a rapidly fatal disease back then. The doctors had given up hope.
But the mother, displaying what Yogananda calls her immeasurable faith, took action. She knew her son was too weak to even lift his hands to pray, so she motioned him to look at the master's picture on the wall and just bow to him mentally.
And she made a clear, devotion-based promise.
She did. She said, "If you really show your devotion and inwardly kneel before him, your life will be spared."
And as he gazed at the photograph, he experienced an immediate, transformative miracle. He saw a blinding light enveloping my body and the entire room.
The light was instant, and its effect was absolute. Nausea, all the cholera symptoms, they just vanished. Instantly, he was well at once, strong enough to get up and touch his mother's feet.
And crucially, the healing was validated because his mother saw it too.
Yes, she also witnessed the luminous blaze, which confirmed it was a real, tangible, spiritual event channeled through that image.
And the existence of that image itself is wrapped in its own miracle, demonstrating the master's control over matter. Lahiri Mahasaya had a profound aversion to being photographed.
Oh, yeah. The source tells us he deliberately foiled early attempts. In one instance, a group picture was taken over his protest. When the plate was developed, all the disciples were clear, but where Lahiri Mahasaya should have been, there was just a blank space.
He just wasn't captured.
Not at all. This was so strange that an expert photographer, Gangadhar Babu, vowed the fugitive figure would not escape him. He used every technical trick he knew, 12 photographic plates.
And the result?
The same thing. All 12 plates just showed the imprint of the wooden bench and the screen behind him. The guru's form was missing from every single one.
Which prompted the guru's most philosophical statement on the whole thing.
It did. He asked, "I am spirit. Can your camera reflect the omnipresent invisible?" It's a challenge to the very nature of physical documentation.
The heartbroken photographer then pleaded for a picture of the bodily temple where alone to my narrow vision that spirit appears fully to dwell.
And the master finally agreed to pose just one more time. And that single, final attempt resulted in the one clear, sacred photograph that exists today.
The very photo that saved Yogananda's life.
And the description of the photo reinforces his spiritual state. Fair features of a universal cast, revealing intense joy of God communion. His eyes are half closed, signifying he's only nominally focused on the outer world, but fully awake and responsive to the needs of spiritual seekers.
So that healing, it really set the stage for Yogananda to seek his own internal realization, to move past the external photograph. And shortly after the cholera incident, he fell into this deep reverie, driven by a really profound question: what is behind the darkness of closed eyes?
And the answer was immediate and overwhelming. An immense flash of light manifested, which then resolved into what he calls miniature cinema pictures, showing divine shapes of saints meditating in mountain caves.
He spoke aloud, asking, "Who are you?" And the response was this celestial chorus: "We are the Himalayan yogis."
And his immediate childhood reaction was just pure devotion. "I long to go to the Himalayas and become like you."
But the vision didn't stop there. The images of the saints vanished, and the light expanded in ever-widening circles to infinity. And then a voice, resonant like murmuring clouds, declared, "I am Aum. I am light."
And this is a pivotal spiritual experience. We need to give some context on Aum here.
Please.
Aum, or is the sound of the creative vibration, the unstruck sound, which Hindus believe underlies all of creation. It's the closest manifestation of God you can access with your senses God as sound and light.
So to hear it as murmuring clouds and feel that pull to merge with the infinite light.
It gave him a permanent legacy of inspiration to seek God, which he defines as eternal, ever-new joy. He had experienced the formless aspect of the divine.
And that foundational experience leads us to the final set of childhood stories that demonstrate the power of inner concentration and will over the physical world. And we start with the cautionary tale of the boil incident.
Yes, an essential lesson in the ethics of power. He's sitting with his older sister Uma under a neem tree. She complains about a boil on her leg. And Yogananda, sort of testing his new internal focus, smears some ointment on a perfectly healthy spot on his own forearm.
And declares, "Well, sis, I feel I'm going to have a boil tomorrow."
And Uma just taunts him, calls him a little liar. And that taunt triggers what he calls an adamant resolution, where he applies the full force of his will to a purely material and pretty negative outcome.
He spoke with absolute conviction.
He did. He said, "By the power of will in me, I say that tomorrow I shall have a fairly large boil in this exact place on my arm, and your boil shall swell to twice its present size." This wasn't a wish. It was a focused command, illustrating the concept of Vak Shakti, the vibratory power in speech.
And the next morning,
both commands were fulfilled. Precisely. He had a large boil, Uma's had doubled in size, and she runs to their mother exclaiming that her brother has become a necromancer.
which led to a very grave instruction from his mother.
To never to use the power of words for doing harm. And Yogananda still bore the scar from the surgery on his forearm, a lifelong physical anchor for that metaphysical lesson.
The takeaway isn't just that words are powerful. It's that concentration, even when it's driven by childish anger, can channel enough explosive vibratory power to produce definite, injurious effects. That scar is a constant reminder that unfocused emotional energy is dangerous.
It's the double-edged sword of spiritual development. The internal power is real, it's palpable, but without the wisdom and ethical application taught by a guru, it can be destructive. He learned to direct that power constructively, which brings us to the final story, the kites.
Right, the setting is Lahore. He's on a balcony with Uma, and he's acquired this unequivocal conviction that the Divine Mother would grant any of his prayers at this little makeshift shrine he had there.
And Uma was naturally skeptical, especially when he vowed to retrieve 2 kites flying high above, whose strings had been cut during a kite fighting game. Physically, this should be impossible. The kites should just drift away.
For them to fall directly onto a balcony over a narrow lane. Yeah, impossible. So he begins these silent, concentrated prayers. The first kite is cut, floats toward them.
And here's the uncanny detail. The string gets entangled in a cactus plant on the opposite house, forming a perfect loop, precisely where he could reach out and grab it.
And Uma, the logician's daughter, dismisses it as an extraordinary accident.
So Yogananda doubles down. He prays with crescendo intensity for the second kite.
And the second kite is lost by its player and, again, defying physics, heads straight for them. And the helpful assistant, the cactus plant, secures the string in another perfect loop.
This was the final, undeniable proof. The combination of intense prayer, concentrated will, and unwavering faith created an immediate, measurable effect in the external world.
And Uma's response is the perfect punchline.
A classic understatement before she bolts. Indeed, Divine Mother listens to you. This is all too uncanny for me.
The message is just so clear. The same inner power that, when misused, caused a permanent scar, when channeled through devotion and focused will, could immediately alter physical reality. Hashtag outro.
So what does this all mean? When you put it all together, this single chapter is like a comprehensive spiritual curriculum. We've established the philosophical foundation of retained consciousness, the necessity of applying spiritual discipline, karma yoga, Kriya yoga, and family life, and the tangible, verifiable power of transcendent forces.
Whether it's the guru materializing in a field, a cholera healing, or the directed power of a single thought. This wasn't just a nostalgic look at his childhood, it was a very deliberate introduction to the laws of consciousness that are going to govern the rest of his life in his book.
Exactly. He moved from the theory of reincarnation, through the structure of saintly duty, to direct, repeatable proof of the divine presence in his immediate physical reality. He was being thoroughly prepped for the path of self-realization.
The synthesis, then, is that the foundation was laid not just through philosophical guidance, but through physical, undeniable phenomena. Every element, the father's integrity, the mother's charity, the guru's intercession, it all contributed to forging a child who was ready to fully embrace the ultimate search.
Exactly.
And if we circle back to that cautionary tale of the boil incident, where concentration applied without wisdom resulted in physical harm and a permanent scar, it raises a really important question for you, the learner. If unconscious, emotionally charged words possess sufficient explosive vibratory power, Vak Shakti, to produce definite lasting effects in the world, what is the unseen constant impact of our daily unfocused thoughts and intentions, the ones we broadcast silently into our own lives and the lives of those around us? Is the quality of our outer reality simply the accumulated unfocused intention of our inner world? Something for you to ponder as you approach your day.